When you're the number one pick in the 2024 draft, you're going to get a lot of attention. And when just over a year after you get drafted, you make all the way up to AAA, you're definitely going to get a lot more attention. Now, he's not guaranteed a starting job in Cleveland, but they may not be able to keep him down in the minors or AAA if he keeps staying healthy and hitting the way he has been. I'm going to walk you through the data and show you how I project to make that he can be a very profitable player for you if you take him at the right spots in the drafts, and he's being currently undervalued. But I want to show you all the resources that I use and how I make these decisions. You don't have to agree with me on them, but you can see how I make the decision. First, let's take a look at where I go to first. So I go to the NFBC rankings. So this is the average draft position of over 105 leagues that have drafted recently. And these people have actually paid money so that they're not just going willy-nilly and taking, moonshots on people. They're actually putting their money forward, so they're going to make the best decisions they possibly can. What's interesting is since he stopped playing back at the end of the season, his ranking has actually really fallen off. He's dropped quite a bit significantly, and he's currently the 622nd person drafted in his average draft position with his max being of 570, which means there are a lot of leagues where he's not even being drafted. So people aren't even considering him depending on roster size, whatever the case might be. And I'm going to walk you through why I think that there's an opportunity here. If it says that people are sleeping on him or not expecting him to come up, I think there is a lot of opportunity for him to potentially grab a role. I would say 70% chance that he has the starting gig in Cleveland at some point during the year. The only thing we have to monitor and watch for is this going to happen at spring training? Is he going to grab the job and run with it? Or is this something he's going to start out in AAA? And if he hits well, he'll come up mid-season, whatever the case might be. I can't say that. We'll just have to keep monitoring it. But this is someone to put on your watch list or draft really late in some of your drafts, especially if you have a middle infielder option where you might need some extra help in middle infield rather than just drafting a second baseman with some risk. So we'll walk through it, and there's definitely some potential opportunity here for him, but there's also some risk. So we're going to talk through the risk in his profile, and there's risk with any certain rookie that you're going to have or someone who's just come up to the majors, see how that actually translate to Major League Baseball, especially in their first year, regardless of their potential. So down here at the bottom, I have the roster resource from Fangraphs, which really says, as of today, without any other moves being made, the current second baseman that they would be going with is Gabriel Arias, who is a 77 WRC plus as of last year and with a 34% K rate. So I think this is an unsustainable production level, and I think that this is why there's an opportunity and why maybe the Cleveland Guardians are trying to rush Bazzana to see if he could be ready to fill this role, because they may need help as soon as possible. And we know Cleveland needs lots of bats as soon as possible in the majors because that's one of their biggest areas of greatest need. So I see the opportunity here is that there's almost nobody blocking him from potentially getting a major league starting job. And as a prospect or a rookie, that would be a fantastic thing. However, what the NFBC tells us at the top here is that nobody is drafting him as that's going to be a highly likelihood of happening, because lots of people are not drafting him at all. And I think that's why there's a 70% chance potentially that he gets the job and runs with it at some point during the season. So this is a situation that we definitely need to monitor. So the opportunity is there for him. And if you look at if you've ever had a Dodgers prospect or held on to them, you know that there aren't very many opportunities, or the Yankees, it's hard for these prospects to even break in and find a role. So when we wanted to identify the opportunity ones where someone could easily fill a need for a team pretty quickly, then that's ones where you can get a huge return on your investment, especially if people are sleeping on this, and you can get them pretty late in your drafts. And then whether you trade them or whether you keep them, you can return a big profit for where you drafted them in your leagues. Now, let's look at the profile. So I've pulled up the Major League Baseball prospect watch here on the left, which shows that Bazzana has a hit tool. They say it could be potential up to 65 grade hit tool. We'll talk in a minute how 55 power, 60 runs, so all above average overall, 60 grade player and prospect. That's why he's one of the tops in the Guardian system and one of the tops of all the prospects in the minors, and why he was the number one pick and received over an $8 million signing bonus. However, seeing what Fangraphs says of his, hit tools and stuff like that, I think is a little more reasonable about where he is right now, where his hit tool is probably been just below average at a 40 and could get to a 50, but still has potential for, above average power, game power, and above average speed. So this coming from infielder, I think, is very valuable, because I personally like to get a lot of my stolen base contributions from my middle infielders, because it saves me from having to have my outfielders, my big thumpers. I can just save them for huge power. That's where I can draft for power, and I don't have to worry about having stolen bases in that area as much. And that's why you can make choices for certain players and stuff like that that'll just go all in on home runs and so forth, right? Aaron Judge, he's done pretty well the last few years, but he's not going to get you a ton of stolen bases. And I say that even though last year I kind of got in a trap where I didn't have my middle infielders, and I'm trying to build them back up with someone like Bazzana, because I end up having to start Chandler Simpson way more often than I needed to, because I was way behind in stolen bases, and you can't punt a category, especially if you're in a rotisserie and so forth like that. You have to compete in every category if you want to be at the top of the standings. So I think the profile looks pretty good as the potential. Now let's look under the hood here and see why there is some risk, and there's a risk with any prospect and so forth. But hopefully in the first case, at least the data that I'm seeing, why I'm presenting you and walking you through the data of how I perceive it, you may reach a different conclusion. You may not jump on it, but I'm at least showing you the data and the rationales that I make so that I can make logical decisions prospect to prospect and come up with some theories of what does and doesn't work and check it rather than just completely guessing every time. So in this case for Bazzana, I think the opportunity is there because there is almost nobody blocking him that has average Major League Baseball performance or expected performance this year. And then his performance, at least his characteristics as a prospect, has really high grades. Now when you look under the hood how he's been doing, he's been doing all right in the minors, certainly made all his way to AAA. Which is, if you just gave someone that soundbite, that would sound like someone you want to jump on because they're moving through the levels pretty quickly. But he's not necessarily hitting very well. He's hitting 243 in his career, and mostly in the 220s, stuff like that, even all the way to AAA at 225 in a short amount of 26 games. However, he has a fantastic on-base percentage because he does have a very high walk rate. So if you're in an on-base percentage league, which I like to play in, then that doesn't hurt you really at all and actually could be a bonus for you and would make him even a better sleeper for all on-base percentage leagues. Now, if you look over here on the right side from Prospect Savant, you can see there's hit and misses on some of his data. So he even hit or miss on his exit velocities, which is very interesting. Usually when you see an average exit velocity being pretty solid, but the 90th percentile being pretty poor, probably says that they're hitting too many ground balls versus getting the ball in the air. But he does have a fantastic walk rate, and he doesn't chase pitches very often. So this is something I think does project a profile really well, something you can carry with you to the majors. He's not going to walk at 24% rate in the majors, but I think if he's patient and draws a lot of walks, it'll keep him in the lineup a lot longer, especially even if he's struggling or making adjustments to major league pitching, and that'll keep him in for a lot longer. Is that some of the things that I think he needs to improve is his swing percentage is really one of the lowest. He only swings at 36% of the pitches, so he's almost too patient and almost looking to draw walks rather than letting it loose and trying to hit the ball as hard as he can. So we're setting the case here that I think there's an opportunity for him. He has the prospect pedigree to fill the role, and there is some risk in his profile, which there would be for any prospect to at least go in the situation with your eyes wide open. But I think the opportunity for him to grab a job and keep it next year in Major League Baseball is actually higher than some of the other prospects that are ranked really high at the top of the board. So let's take a look at the average draft positions again on NFBC for second baseman. And currently with that, ranking average draft position of 622, that means that Bazzana is being drafted as the 39th second baseman off the board. So he is way down on the rankings. I think it's because there's not a guarantee that he would be in the majors next year or even have a starting job. But I think the opportunity I just laid out for you is a little bit higher than what people are projecting here. And I think if we were to get them, this is someone to put on your watch lists. This is someone to pay attention to in spring training and what they're doing and what that situation is. And if we hear that he gets the job, I think he's going to shoot up these prospect rankings, at least here in the second base rankings. I think if you look who's ahead of him, Christian Moore, Jake Cronenworth starting to get a little older and in decline and so forth. Jonathan India in Kansas City. I think even Chase Meidroth with the Chicago White Sox. I think if Bazzana is given the job and starts in the majors, wherever that occurs, whether that's after spring training or a mid-year call-up and stuff like that, I think he would immediately be ranked higher than someone like Chase Meidroth. So he'd jump at least 10 points in the second base rankings overall. And so let's take a little bit look on the Meidroth, why I'm making that kind of projection as well. So when you look at Chase Meidroth, who just was a rookie last year in the majors and came up, he has his projections for next year are nothing really amazing. Maybe 10-ish home runs, maybe up to 15 stolen bases, but really 10 to 15 stolen bases. Not a lot of ISO, so not a lot of great power. So he does walk a fair amount, so his on-base percentage isn't terrible, but he's not really going to give you that. When you're hitting like that, you're not going to get a ton of these counting stats. You can see his RBIs are really lacking for the number of games that he's playing. I typically like to see, if you want to have 80 runs or 80 RBIs, you have to get, one every 2 games, and he's almost like one every 3 games and stuff like that in the RBIs. So I think the production of Mydroth to be exceeded by Bazzana is really a low bar for him, right? And if you look at Mydroth, he's currently slated to bat, lead off for the Chicago White Sox next year, assuming they don't make any other deals. They already got Murakami here, slotting in at 7th. Maybe he should be a little bit higher in that lineup as well, too, since they also need some help as well. But I think that's why when I look at this overall, I think Bazzana has the opportunity to leap way ahead of even Mydroth or others that are going drafted way higher. So let's go back to the FBC and see where above Mydroth this could slot him. So right now you can get someone currently ranked 39th in the second baseman, but if he were to be named the starter and you just have him draft him late in your leagues or have him on your watch list if it's a mid-year call-up, and as soon as we get the word that he's coming called up, he's going to hopefully, I'd say 7% chance of having the job and running with it through the rest of the year, especially with that high walk rate to keep him in lineups. He's going to shoot way up, I think, above Mydroth, and then he probably falls somewhere in this area with Ernie Clement, Tommy Edman, and stuff like that. So people are getting drafted in the top 300, so you can gain 300 points of value from 622 to 300 just by getting them a little bit ahead of people, holding on to him, waiting to see when he gets the call up, and then seeing if he can hold the job down, which there really isn't a whole lot of other competition in Cleveland that could displace him unless they make another move between now and opening day. But that's why I think this is a situation that you need to put on your watch list. You need to monitor going forward, and then you need to jump on Bazzana ahead of other people, because it's this rare combination of certainly the major league club has the opportunity and the need and the hole of that position for someone to fill. He has the prospect pedigree for it. He's already made his way to AAA, and he's doing fairly well, at least in on-base percentage, that it looks like he could perform. So maybe there's a chance that they start him in AAA and see how he does, or maybe they really take a long, hard look at him during spring training, and especially while this year is the World Baseball Classic, so a lot of people will be gone from their teams for a while in mid-March, which opens up more opportunity for prospects or younger players to get more at-bats and more looks in the spring training while the World Baseball Classic is going on. So I think Travis Bazzana is someone whose prospect ranking currently right now for 2026 makes absolutely no sense, just because of he may not get the job immediately, but as soon as he does, he's going to be returned way more value than where he's currently being taken. Then I think it's worth taking the risk. Now, this isn't obviously someone who might be your first second baseman off the board, but if your league has a middle infield position that you need to fill as well, which makes it a little bit deeper in the positions you got to draft, or if this is someone that you just wait and put on your watch list and then scoop him up if there's an inkling that he's going to get called up, because I think once he does, he has a clearer path to playing time than most other prospects, I think, in the top 10 rankings that are right now, in any list that you can come up with. And so I think this is someone you need to pay attention to. And if you like this kind of stuff, make sure you subscribe and follow, because we'll be covering fantasy baseball prospects, especially to see where they are in the beginning of here in 2026.